Leadership in education isn't just about making decisions. It's about inspiring change. But when you think about it, when you truly think about transformation in schools, it's about creating a culture where students and teachers can thrive. Today, we're sitting down with a leader who does just that. Welcome to Transforming Lives podcast, the podcast where we dive into stories of educators who are shaping education across our nation, one decision at a time. Our guest today, Principal Jeff, he's a leader who has dedicated his career to not just managing schools, but transforming them. And here's a little caveat, I don't get this opportunity many times, but I'm actually talking to a former football coach. So, again, those former guests do not get mad. I'm a little happy. So you can kind of hear the excitement in my voice. But again, he's the principal of Hastings High School. Jeff has navigated the challenges of leadership while fostering a school culture to own innovation and trust and student success. So today we explored his journey into educational leadership, the challenges administrators face, right? Like that's a whole podcast there. And what it takes to support teachers in a way that goes beyond survival, helping them thrive. In this conversation, Jeff will share his insight on leadership, navigating change, and how to build trust with the staff while diving into meaningful school-wide transformation. Whether you're an inspiring administrator, a seasoned leader, or a teacher looking for inspiration, you're gonna walk away with a powerful takeaway. Before we dive in, hey, don't forget to subscribe to Transforming Lives podcast on YouTube. Share this episode with the educator who needs to hear this. And again, also, I want to put his YouTube channel out there as well, and we'll bring that up a little later. Um, and I have that on the screen for you so that you'll be able to subscribe to his as well. Because again, we're not doing this alone; we're doing this together as a body of educators. So, hey, it's time to get things rocking and rolling. So, let's go.
From educators worldwide. Impact happening worldwide. Your transformation starts here.
All right, guys. So again, thank you so much for joining. I'm bringing on to the stage. We're going to bring on my next guest, Principal Jeff Linden. He is the principal of Hastings. So again, when we talk about 50 educators from 50 states, Nebraska is now on the map. So let's get this thing going. Perfect. Principal Jeff, how you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Tony?
I'm great. Good deal, man. Things work out. I just want to say that, right? Things work out. Um, and I usually, start us out by asking, how is the weather in Nebraska?
Well, it just depends what day, what week we're in, because we kind of hit a cold snap, about a week ago where it got down real cold, probably negatives. But now we're starting to trend into the 50s and 60s. Cooled down a little bit today, but overall, I think we're past all our faux springs. We like to have, hey, it looks like we're gonna have spring. Nope. Mother Nature says nope. We're gonna have another winter blast here. So it's kind of been a seesaw over the last probably a month here in Nebraska on the weather.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of the thing now where in Mississippi there is a tornado watch later today. So that's like we've gone from, cold weather, spring, winter, tornado season, and now it's just like, we'll land somewhere at some point. So maybe we'll get summer soon. So yeah, definitely. Thank you for coming on. And here's the thing about it. When I think about Nebraska, you know what automatically comes to mind for me, right?
I hope so.
What comes to mind is the Cornhuskers. I don't know if you're a fan of the Cornhuskers, but I think of the triple option. Tom Osborne just running that triple option. And one play that just, ugh, as a defensive coordinator, I hated was the counter. That's
Oh
what
yeah,
that's what comes to mind. Well, great.
yeah, you bet. Yeah, I'm a huge Nebraska Cornhusker fan. Grew up in Nebraska, dreaming to run out on Memorial Stadium. Just wasn't in the cards for me. But here's an interesting fact. Hastings High School, where I'm the principal, is where Dr. Tom Osborne graduated high school back in 1955. And so I'm leading the Tigers, and he's going, what, 70 years ago? Yeah, 70
Yeah.
years ago is when he graduated high school. He also went to high school or college at Hastings College here in Hastings, and then moved on into working under Devaney, coaching football, and kind of left his legacy there. But
Yeah.
he's still around. He's still working with the teammate mentoring program and doing things. It was it. He's up there. He's up there now, but yeah, he's still around. He still visits the team, and Coach Rule will bring him in, and he'll watch some practices and hang out and give advice and things like that. So yeah, he's still doing the things.
Okay, well, that was some information I did not know. Appreciate you dropping that on the show. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. So that I think that's a good segue when we talk about, leadership. You know, uh, as a podcaster, you do your homework and you find out, the person's background. But for the listeners, can you share your journey into educational leadership and what inspired you to take this path?
Yeah. So it really starts like I was not going to college straight out of high school to become an educator. I actually am a non-traditional educator. I actually took the 10-year route to graduate my undergrad with my BA in education. But really, kind of what set my path forward in education was becoming a football coach at Kearney Catholic in Nebraska. That's kind of where I put some things together and was like, hmm, I really like this coaching thing. I really enjoy watching kids take what you learn and apply it.
Yeah,
And I think, going into education teaching, man, I'd be happy just being a teacher and a football coach the rest of my life.
yeah.
Um, and so that's kind of where I started it out. And then from there, the more I got into education, the more the other thing I want to talk about is I also have a military background. So I was in the Army Reserves for 8 years. And so I was a non-commissioned officer. I went through leadership programming, so being a football coach. I also was a wrestling coach and a track coach in my time. I spent 11 years in the classroom, and really the reason why I got into educational leadership was to have more impact. Not saying I
Hmm.
wasn't having an impact as a football coach, wrestling coach, track coach, and a teacher. I was. I felt like there was more that I can give to something that was given back to me so much. Um, that's kind of where I kind of led into going back to school, getting my educational administration. I have my curriculum instruction because I felt like if I'm going to be a good principal, I need to be able to lead my teachers into
Right.
how to be good instructors. And I got to have, I also looked at it this way. I needed to have 10 years of in the classroom. And the reason why I made that decision was because I felt like in the military, when you had commissioned officers that didn't go through the work, didn't go through the hard stuff as you would as a junior enlisted soldier, uh, they weren't the best leaders. And so I go, you know what? If I'm going to lead as an educational leader, I'm going to spend time in the classroom. I'm going to go through the hard stuff because then I can speak to what I've done in the classroom to my teachers, and they know I'm not full of it when
Right.
I'm asking them to do things that are an expectation or things that I always tell them I'm not going to ask you to do something if I have not done it or I will
Hmm.
not do myself. And so that was really important to me. And so once I got about 10, 11 years in, it was just one of those things. My wife's grandpa sat me down, who was a former educational leader, and he kind of said, you know what, this whole teaching and coaching is great, but you're meant to do more, and you're meant to really go into this leadership role. And that kind of sat with me, and I was like, yeah, you're full of it, right? When I first heard it, because I was loving life. I was love being a head football coach, wrestling, track, all those things. I love what I was doing. And so stepping away from that, knowing going into educational leadership, I was going to not coach like in that capacity. But that's where I started looking at, how I lead is like a coach. And so I look at myself more as a coach than a principal. Yeah, principal is my job title, but I want to lead people and make them better. And then how do I help them, support them, and get them better? And I want to see them take the things that we worked on and become successful at that. Because if my teachers are being successful, then guess who's being successful in the classroom? The
Right.
students. And that's the overall goal, and that's kind of what drive me into it. I've kind of got a unique path. I've been in small rural schools in Nebraska. I've also taught in the Omaha Metro. I led
Mm,
a small rural school as a principal, and now I'm in a bigger district where I have about 1,000 students, 133, staff in my whole building, and so it's quite different than what I was doing prior to, you know,
yeah.
becoming at Hastings. So I've kind of led a bunch of different capacities in different size districts, and so I have a unique perspective on just education as a whole, and kind of where we're at.
Right. No, that's good. As I'm listening to the story, again, you match the words with the voice, and it's like, okay, our paths are very similar. And to hear your approach of saying, hey, in order for you to walk that walk and make sure that the talk matches they have to synergize. Where one of the, I guess one of the reasons why I transitioned into the place that I transitioned into was because I was like, I got the educational degree, I got an administrative degree, but I want to become a better instructional leader. So I'm going to take this route here and hope that, not hope, this taking this route would help me develop more as an instructional leader because I felt like that was the most important part of being a principal. But to hear your story, it's like, okay, Jeff, like, all right, we are very similar from a head coach to looking at, when I begin to think about just as a football coach, when you think about coaching at what we have in Mississippi, a 1A school, then coaching at what we call our largest division, which is 7A, it's a difference. Like, you
Yeah.
got 100 kids, you got 20 kids on your team 1A, and you got 100 kids, almost 100 kids on your team in 7A. And it's like there is a difference and there's a different approach. And that's same thing applies when we talk about schools. Like, okay, you got 1,000 kids, a little different than having 200 kids or 100 kids in your school, and you got 10 on your staff. You're like, this is different. Yeah, yeah. So,
Well, I
so
think what people don't realize is at a smaller district, you wear more hats. At a bigger district, I have more of a team to where, I don't have to take everything on like I used to. Now, I had people that I worked with, but there was a lot more hats that I wore at a smaller district than I do at a bigger district. And really, at the bigger district, I have people to do some of the things. I guess my biggest challenge was going from small rural school to a bigger district was, what did I not have to do? What could I delegate to
delegate.
let delegate to where, like, you know what, I don't have to worry about this as much. I can focus more on the school culture. I can focus more on the bigger picture stuff to where I didn't have to do student discipline as much. I still do some of that. So don't get me wrong. When big things come up, that I have to come in and help with that. But I have some great system principals, just like having great assistant coaches that take care of, some of those things that I don't have to worry about. And my biggest thing is helping making sure the systems are running right,
Correct.
and think people are where they're at and doing the things they need to do, and everything's running smoothly. That's my biggest job right now as a larger school principal. But being at that small school, sometimes you had to put on the bus driver hat. Sometimes you had to put on the, you know, uh, you know, custodial hat. Sometimes you
Right.
had to put on the, anything and everything you could think of. You had to do it because who else is going to do it, right?
Right.
But I had some great people that I worked with at my previous school as well, and I think that's kind of what led me up. Understanding small schools systems into larger district systems, gives me kind of that unique perspective on things.
Oh, that's good. That's a podcast within itself. So that is looking for an idea. You just dropped an idea right there, talking about that transition and the responsibilities and how delegation is a word that is necessary. So that kind of puts us into this whole idea of, what is one aspect of education, when you think about leadership and education, that is often misunderstood and overlooked. Since we're in that lane, so what's something that's overlooked? You kind of addressed it a little bit there, but is there one particular or thought that you have?
I think the biggest thing that is misunderstood as leaders is, don't let your emotions rule the day. Don't um, allow them to take things personal,
Mm,
because as a leader, as a principal, you're going to deal with things all the time, and you got to understand you're doing the best you can. You're collaborating with your team, you're making decisions. I think when principals move hastily and make decisions through emotion, that's where they get themselves in trouble. So I really have to step back on situations and collect all the information and try to
mhm,
make the best decision based off the information I have in front of me. And I think that's a misunderstanding of why can't they just make a decision like that? Well, it's because I have a lot of things to think about. I have, staff members, students, parents, community members. I have all these things I got to think through before making a decision, depending on how it's going to impact other things. And so I have to really
right.
sit and go through that. And sometimes when you get, told something or someone's coming at you, they're mad, being able to kind of like, decompress the situation, get them calmed down to where you can have that adult conversation and
Yeah.
emotions aren't ruling the day. I think that's the biggest thing is don't lead with emotion. Just really kind of take the time to process things and make decisions with a clear head. Because I think where administrators get the biggest mistakes is when they let their emotions get the best of them. They take things personal and they make snap decisions based off of their emotion. And so you can't do that in this role. If you do that, you're going to have issues down the road. You got to really use a clear head and a clear mind when you make those decisions.
Ooh. Um, when we think about emotions, we have them. We naturally have them, and being able to manage them is definitely important. Um, and I love how you um, make the statement that emotions cannot be the driver of your decisions, because there are a lot of people that are going to be impacted by your single decision, and it doesn't look like it at the moment, but parents, teachers, staff members, like it's a lot of people that are impacted by the decisions that the principal seats uh, controls. Like it does. You don't realize it, and definitely emotions become the glasses that you view the situation. So sometimes you have to back up. I love what you said, backing up and allowing um, to have a well-rounded approach. If not, yeah, it doesn't necessarily end well.
Yeah. I think you got to keep in mind you got to have a collaborative approach to things because for me, yeah, I got to make decisions, but I'm not making them without collaboration. I'm not making them without gaining all the information I need, getting other people's point of views, getting other people's perspectives. Because once I hear everything out, it makes a lot of times it leads me to the decision that needs to be made. And so being able to collect that information and to utilize that to make good, solid decisions is very important. And that's where that collaboration piece, you have to have that. And that's all part of building that culture in your school as well.
Absolutely. So that leads us into our next question. What are some of the biggest, largest surprises or challenges new administrators face in that first year, and how can districts, or what can administrators do to prepare them for that transition?
Yeah, I think, coming into educational administration, there's not a lot of stuff out there for us. You go through your master's and you get your degree, and then you get a job, and it's like, good luck, you know? So a lot of times you're learning by fire and you're trying to learn all the state regulations and the rules and the things you need to know because now you're in charge of this building and it's
Right.
almost like you got this fire hose of information. You're just like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Well, I got to slow this down. How can I, get all this information to where I can wrap my head around it? Because you coming into this position it's you may think you know what it is, but you don't know until you actually sit in the seat. You
Wow.
don't
Yeah.
know what it's like to navigate through the issues we got to navigate until you're actually doing it. And as a teacher, we're kind of isolated in our classroom and really focused on, hey, we're teaching the content, we're helping the kids. I was a math teacher, like you were a math teacher, so I was really focused on getting those kids to understand and learn math. And that was my world. And then when I stepped out of that world, now I have this whole building. Oh my goodness, I have all these people, these students. You know, I'm what how I lead is going to impact them on a daily basis, and I think that's something that you gotta remind yourself. And so I think coming in, you're not going to know everything. That's just flat out. You learn through experience. But
Yeah.
I think there's things that need to be done to help administrators become making the transition much smoother. That's really the reasons why I have my podcast is I want to help educational leaders get it connected with other people, hear other people's stories so A, they know they're not alone. Because a lot of times this job you feel like you're on an island and you're
Right.
doing this on your own. Even though I'm at a bigger district and I have a team of people I rely on, I still am on my own. Like I'm still in charge of everybody under me.
Yeah.
The only other person that's not in charge, only I report to my superintendent and our
Yeah.
cabinet members, but outside of that, everybody that I have helping, navigate through our day to day, yeah, I can be friendly, but I can't. I have to have a level of professionalism and separate my personal life from my professional life, and so that's where making connections and networking. And for me, it's getting out and podcasting, connecting. That's
Yeah.
how I met you is through podcasting, dedicating, trying to figure out how can I help other educators and that are in the same situation I was in when I started back in 2018 is when I started being a principal
Yeah.
to where I can help them if they hear one episode of my podcast and they get something out of it, I was successful. And that's kind of where that is. And I think really districts need to have some sort of mentoring program with with educational leaders. I think there's got to be somebody you can go to and be mentored with. Like I was lucky I had a superintendent when I first started out. He had an open door policy. He was willing to hear me out and we talked through things, which was nice, but it still wasn't probably enough, I guess. I didn't have like that go-to person to
Yeah.
where I can go, to be honest, to go complain about something where I need to get some venting done,
Right.
to have somebody outside of my district to go to. And so I have learned there's some people out there that are doing that job. They're doing that, coaching up educational leaders to be better leaders. And that's I've kind of learned through just my podcasting and I want to help people. And that's kind of where I'm at right now is I want to help other educational leaders get better. And so if they're willing to let me help them, they just got to reach out to me and I'll help them to navigate through some of the things that they may be dealing with because sometimes you need somebody that's not in your district or in your building to talk about things freely. And that's just not out there. And that's where I'm trying to provide information and connect people to help them with that.
Right. So that is a whole conversation there because that's the reason why um um one of the reasons why I started my podcast is that very reason of being a hub for educational transformation and being that hub because here's what I experienced. Let me dial this back a little bit to kind of tie this in. I remember as a young defensive coordinator, I didn't understand. We ran a 4-4 defense. I didn't understand how to stop the outside run.
Mm.
I struggled with it. In fact, I remember my head coach calling timeout one game and just says, "Fix it," and it's like I didn't understand how to fix it. And at that point, I learned how to reach out to other coaches
Hmm.
and find out. Let me tell you how crazy it was, and I'm sure this will tie over into our next conversation later. I was so crazy. I reached out to NFL coaches. Just
Nothing like going to the top.
right. Then you spoke about going like it was crazy. In fact, let me show you how crazy it is. I reached out to Dick LeBeau during the time that he was defensive coordinator at Pittsburgh, and to my surprise, I left him a voicemail, He called me back, and it's to hear this story of, you know, your goal, your purpose of your podcast, you as a person just wanting to help other leaders grow. That's what it's about. It's transformation. It's not a solo event. It's an event that we all have to connect. So um, thank you for sharing that about, you know, just your purpose and why you are approaching your podcast in that way, and just leadership in general. So you know, what advice would you provide for educators on how to navigate change effectively? You know, build trust with their staff. Uh, and this is really a tough, this is a loaded question. We'll talk about building trust with their staff and just get the buy-in for new initiatives, because that's
Yeah.
yeah.
So I kind of use what I use is a 30, 60, 90 approach in my first year of being an administrator here at Hastings High School. So my first 30 days was getting to know my staff. So I intentionally went to every staff member in my building and had a 2 to 3 minute conversation. Hey,
Mm,
this is who I am. Hey, how are you? What are some things that are interesting? So what I wanted to do in those conversations is to A, break the ice, B, get to know them on a somewhat personal level and professional level, and have a nice little conversation. And so what I did is I spent a lot of time in that first 30 days was going to each teacher, each staff, not just teachers, but my custodial staff, my teaching staff, my paras, everybody that worked in my building. I made sure I had an intentional conversation in those first 30 days. And it was just more of a meet and greet. Hey, how are you doing? I'm going to learn something and try to lock in a memory to where I could use that later. So I can go, hey, how's your daughter doing in this
mhm,
situation? Or hey, how's this going? I try to remember those things, because what you want to do is connect with them on that personal and professional level right away.
right.
Because that's how you start to build trust. Because I'll tell you, when I came in, the trusting of administration team was not there,
Ooh.
and they were nervous, they were scared, they didn't know how to react. So I just said, get used to me being around, get used to me being out in the hallways, get used to me being in your classrooms, get used to me doing all these things. Because I go back to when I was a teacher, anytime I saw an administrator, I was in trouble for something. Somebody complained, or they wanted to, they were doing something that felt like I was always in trouble. And so I didn't want to have that. It wasn't until I was a teacher at Hershey High School in Nebraska where Mr. Troxel just showed up in my room, and I'm like, oh, is there anything I need? Anything you need? I was like all nervous about it. He's like, nah, just hanging out. Just want to see what you're up to. I'm like, that's weird. 'Cause at that time, that wasn't my experience with administration. So I
Right.
took that and I ran with it, because I watched my leaders in their positions as a teacher, and I took the best I learned. Oh, this shouldn't do that.
Hmm.
Oh, that looks like something I should adopt. And so I wanted people to understand that I'm going to be visible. I'm going to be out there doing things. And so my first 30 days was that. My next 60 days was listening, understanding listening and understanding the issues that we're having. And our biggest issue at that time was students are wandering. They're everywhere. They're not in class. They're not being where they need to be. And so that's when we got the school improvement team together. And I was really intentional on trying to make sure we had a staff member that represented each department of the school, to where everybody had a voice, everybody had some sort of um, you know empowerment through the process, to where they had a seat at the table. And so we were able to take the issues. Our main issues were kids were were out of classroom, not being where they need to be. Cell phones were an issue, and so those are our two big ones. So we worked together to develop. And so after listening, then it was collecting the data to try to understand the situation better. And then those last 90 days, as a school improvement team, we went to work and started trying to find solutions to the issues that the teachers are saying and the staff are saying. These are the things we need to fix. I don't look at school improvement as how did you improve your test scores? I don't care about that right now. I care about getting the culture in the school right away, building the relationships, but actually solving problems and having solutions to issues that they're facing right now, so it becomes better. And so we were able to create well, they wanted this extra duty. I kept asking them if they really wanted this extra duty, and they said yes. So we have hall monitors. We went to an e-hall pass system, so that helped clear out the hallways. We revamped our electronic device policy to where students can't have them unless it is transition time, lunchtime, or before after school. That's the only time they can have them out. Anytime, can't have it. Even if you're in the hallway during the classroom time, you see it, it's gone. And so that just then that first year we kind of made those solutions and we implemented it in year two, and it really made a big difference in how our school operated. The students were more in class. Even the students would say, "Hey, I'm in class more. I'm not skipping as much, and I'm learning more. My grades are better." And so just those little changes had a big impact. And so this year, we really tackled our attendance issues, our chronic absenteeism, to where we have an attendance policy. Basically, we have tiers of intervention to where at level one, we have this level one tier of supports, level two tiered supports, and level three tier supports. And just within 3/4 of the year, we have improved daily average attendance to 3.68% higher than it was a year ago at the same time, and we reduced chronic absenteeism down to 6.8% down from what it was a year ago at the same time. And so just having that teamwork and that collaboration, that's where that buy-in piece comes. That's where if they have a voice and a seat at the table and they're in there working with you to find these issues, they're going to take that to the staff. And that's the other thing is that they rolled it out. I didn't roll it out. They rolled it out.
Yeah.
And so them rolling it out and getting that feedback from the other staff members, everybody had a say. And I would say one thing that really struck me within that first year was I had a school improvement person say, you know what, we've had this team for X amount of years. And it's the first time that we felt like we actually accomplished something and got something done. And thank you. And so that was a big, win in that first year. Is that's kind of how I approached it in my 30, 60, 90. And that's kind of how I developed the culture we have now. And it's not me. It's just me leading it, but it's the collaboration piece that working with those people. I just had to be open to allow us to be okay to failure. So if we tried something, we had to be okay with failing. I tell them we got to be okay with failing if we try something different, and that's okay. We're going to learn, grow, and go from it. And that's kind of one of my sayings I have: learn, grow, and go with my staff and my students when it comes to that. So that's kind of how I did it my first year, and it's really kind of just kept going. And now I'm in my third year here.
Yeah. So let me first do that because work with a lot of school districts, schools in general, from elementary, middle to high, and they have a sound. And listening to you lay out that plan to lay out some of those results, where you go in, you're like, well, all right, let's improve academic achievement. Let's go ahead, but improving academic achievement is those layers underneath where you can't improve academic achievement if they're not in the classroom. It's not happening. I don't care how much the teacher knows. They're going to teach that 10 students. But if you're missing five or six, and again, depends on how big your school is. Those five or six, in some cases, make a huge impact when we begin to talk about, testing. It impacts that district or that school. So to hear how you had that collaborative approach is like, I, I have to stop and say that's awesome because that's leading. Leading is not always being out there in front. It's about leading people to a place and them recognizing how impactful they are in the process. So it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, this is I like this.
No, I just think that's the way you got to do it. And if you're not doing it that way, and if you are trying to be that authoritarian type leader, you're not going to work out very well, and you're not going to last very long in this business. you have to have a collaborative approach. If you don't have a collaborative approach, good luck. That's all
Yeah,
I can say.
I think that is pretty much the what you can offer a person if they just try to do it on their own. You learn that, especially in the classroom. You learn that as well in every level of that system. So you've laid out your 30, 60, 90 plan from just having conversations with your staff, the teachers, and finding out, next you look and listen for the problem, and then you allow the team to push forward solutions. So one part that I want to touch on next is just talking about helping teachers move on. That first year teacher, I'm on this track of looking at, how do you support first year teachers better? And whew, it's a lot more to what you what you think is the surface level problem. It is a much deeper problem or a much deeper approach you must take. So, what are some key things administrators can do to help teachers move beyond just this survival mode and really thrive in those earlier years? Because I remember.
Yeah. No, I mean, my first year teaching, it was here's your room, here's your books, good luck. Only time I'm going to come see you is if someone's complaining. So
Yeah.
I remember that. And so I think we're lucky where I'm at, and even when I was at my other district as well, I think having some sort of go-to person or a mentor for that teacher is super important. I think we have what we call guide teachers, or you can just call them mentor teachers. That's where really what they are, and that gives that teacher a go-to person to understand the processes and systems we have in place, and that's also empowering that teaching staff to have some sort of leadership role within your building and help them guide that first year teacher. And we don't give mentor teachers just the first year teachers. Anybody that's brand new to our building will have a guide teacher, because you could have taught 10 years at another district, but guess what? You're coming in a whole new ball game. You need to understand how our processes work, how our school culture is, how we do things, because not every district is created equal, and that's just truth in public education. And so really having someone to give them a go-to person. My door is always open to my staff. They can always come in and talk to me and, bounce ideas, but it's always good to have somebody that's not an administrator to go to and talk
Right.
to. So I think having that guide teacher is really important. I think this is an area that we do okay at. I think we can do better at supporting our first year teachers, but understanding any type of training that they can get to help them get better at what they need to get better at. I think when it comes to like the evaluation process as a principal, we need to make sure we're giving that teachers tools to put in their toolbox,
Mhm.
because they're coming in with, this is what I learned in college, this is what I learned to do here. But you know what? You really don't know teaching until you're actually in the classroom, you're actually
Right.
doing the work, you're actually face to face with those students every day. You're going to come up with things and go, wow, I didn't learn this in instructional theory. It's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
no, you
Right.
didn't, because that's all theory. It's not, it's not
Not practical.
always practical. So, being able to have someone to bounce ideas off of, have a team. We have a really strong PLC team, to where we have teachers broken down by, we call it similar response teams, to where every week they could collaborate with each other and they could talk about students and kind of where they're at and how they're teaching and things like that. I think the next step that we have to take is really have cross curricular teams. That's something that I would
Mhm.
really like to establish next year, because we have a really good job doing PLC work. We really do a good job within our departments and doing our similar response teams. That also helps that new teacher grow, because now you're working with everybody and you're working with people side by side, not just your mentor teacher. So having these types of systems and things in place for that support is great, because that keeps them off an island. That gives them people to talk to, collaborate with. It also makes them feel supported, to where maybe they're not having that that burnout like they could get if they were just doing it on their own and trying to figure it out on their own. And some teachers are really good about reaching out and getting help, but others aren't. And
Right.
so if you have things in place to help them, I think that's really important to have. And having a systematic approach is really important when it's coming to helping developing new teachers.
Oh, that's great. That's great. In the research that I'm looking at now, one of the reasons why um, that first year teacher leaves, it was a study done, and what they found out was that first year teachers leave because of the lack of support. That was
Mm.
one of the main reasons why. And then you had a new entry teacher, as you explained, if that's 10 years, but if you're coming into a new district, you know, you become, you have to learn the culture within that district or that
Mhm.
school. If not, you're going to suffocate because you have the tools, but you don't understand the culture, and they have to blend together. And yeah, in the article basically said the reasons why they leave is the lack of support, not even finances. It's if it basically said that if the support was there, that the teacher would stay there, even with a lower salary. So
Mm.
I'm diving into that, and what you just laid out, the mentorship, the guide teacher, the training, the building the toolbox, the PLC, and that's basically what they said. That kept um, the teachers there at at that particular school district. So I'm gonna pause there because I'm like, all right, I still got to get to this other part, but you're like laying this down, I'm writing it down, and I'm making these connections. So, how can we help teachers become lifelong learners, and and continuously improve their practice? You talked about the whole cross curricular approach, but for educators, how can you push that from the leader seat?
Yeah, I think when it comes to helping teachers become lifelong learners, is to create a school environment where failure is embraced. To
Mm-hmm.
where you're telling your teaching staff, hey, try something new, try something different. Don't be afraid to fail because we learn through failure and it's okay. Like, hey, I have this new teaching strategy I really want to try, but if you're afraid to try it and you're afraid of failure, you're not going to try that.
You're
And
right.
so you're not going to get better and you're not going to put more tools in your toolbox if you're afraid of that failure. And so, some people will call it productive struggle to
Right.
where, hey, we have some things that where we're going to productively struggle. We're not going to be perfect at it. But we got to learn it's okay to fail if we fail. And to be honest with you, even in my role as a principal, I had to look at my staff and you know what? We're going to try something different with some of these policies and some of the things that we decided as a school improvement team to do. And I'm scared, but if we don't try it, then we'll never know if it works or not. So I had to show my staff, hey, I'm not afraid to fail. If we fail and fall flat on our face with this, at least we said we tried. And I think that's kind of where we're at with teachers is don't be afraid to fail to try new things. And I think supporting them with workshops and learning opportunities. And I think another thing for me, I'm always trying to find ways to help my staff to save time, get better, be more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So we are right now piloting Magic School AI. And I would have never learned that if I didn't interview Principal Mo on my podcast.
Right.
And so bringing Principal Mo on my podcast and learning about some of the AI stuff, I learned, oh, let's check out this Magic School AI. Could this really help our teachers save time? Well, we're piloting right now, and right now the results are like, "Hey, where's this been? Like, we love this. This is great."
Yeah.
So I'm probably gonna have to dig into my budget and figure out how to make it happen next year. Because right now all the feedback's really positive, and teachers actually, we just had a professional development, and I asked teachers to share out how are you using it. I had teachers come up and actually go, hey, this is how I'm using it. And they actually demonstrated that in front of their own colleagues, their own peers, to where I'm letting them show each other, lead each other. It's just not coming from me all the time. And if you're always hearing from me, I don't think that's really effective. I think finding other people to send the message you want to be
Right.
sent,
Right. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
to let other people lead and kind of help people lead, like Dr. Joe Sanfilippo says, lead from where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to do that as a principal is to help other teachers and staff members lead from where they're at and help them, be able to express some things that they've learned and help other people learn those things. And having that's all coming back to building those relationships and trust and that collaborative culture. If we don't have that, I don't think those things happen as effectively.
Yeah. I'm looking at the time, and I got two more questions, but interviewing, I think you might be the 26th person, something around there. And it is a resounding message around relationships. From superintendents, principals, classroom teachers, external providers, it's a resounding message. So relationships matter. I don't care how you look
Yeah.
at it, they matter.
Well, you got to understand we're in the people business. Like that's what we are. We're in the people business, and the only way you get good at that is building relationships and being collaborative, and that's the best way to drive forward.
Absolutely. So, oh, it's good. So, one topic that I think is showing up a lot. What advice would you give educators striving to achieve a work-life balance, and especially in your demanding role as a principal? Does it exist? Can we accomplish it?
Yeah, it exists if you make it exist. Because as leaders, we get so like, oh man, I gotta do this. If I'm not at the school until 6 o'clock at night, people won't think I'm doing my job. Oh, that's BS. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I think when it comes down to you have to set boundaries. You have to set expectations. So what I do is I have a couple of different rules for myself, but also with my staff. When it comes to setting boundaries, I ask my staff not to contact me from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. unless it's an emergency. There are certain things that we'll have to do, but at the same time, yes, I go out and I do some supervision of activities and I kind of work within that spectrum outside of my principal job as well. But
Yeah.
when I'm in the building, I come in, I have my day laid out. I have to know that I get to a certain point, I'm done for the day. I go home and I just decompress at home.
Right.
I don't take work home. I think that's one of those things is I leave work at work as much as I can. Yes, it will chase you back to home once in a while, but
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that's where you have boundaries. And my staff are really good about, hey, I know, you know, you don't want to be contacted at this time, but this has come up. And I'm like, oh, okay, that seems like really important to come talk to. Let's hammer this out. And there's just some things life happens, and I think having boundaries set is super important to where staff knows this is what your expectations are. This is how you're going to do things. But at the same time, you got to be able to do your job in a way to where you set time for things to be done. So what I will do on my Google Calendar is I learned this from Angela Kelly. She was a life coach for principals, and so your mind will get racing on things about, hey, I have to have this job done, or I have to do this. I have all these tasks to do, and I'm a lister, and so I'll list everything out. Then what I'll do is I'll put that on my Google Calendar and say, this is when I'm going to save space for this task. And then I make sure I hold myself accountable to that. I will get that done at this time. And then what that does is it takes it off my brain to where I don't have to think about it no more because I just dedicated time for that task to be done. And so I do that with all the little things. Like it could be as simple as I need to talk to this teacher about this thing. I'll look at the schedule and go, okay, at this time, this is when I'll go do that. Hey, this is when I'll set time for calling this parent. This is when I'm going to set time to write this formal evaluation. This is when I'm going to set time to write this email to all teacher, students, and staff about the upcoming pep rally or the upcoming SE, in this case, ACT, not SAT, but the upcoming ACT testing day.
Right.
There's a lot of things that get put on my plate, and I have to put it on my calendar because that's how I get it done, and I save space for that. And so once you learn kind of some of these tricks on how to do that, that takes a lot of weight and pressure off you because now you have it down to where you're not going to forget about it. You save space for it, and you're going to do that. You just got to hold yourself accountable to that and make sure you do it when you say you're going to do it. And sometimes I have to push things back, but at the same time, I'm not going to get everything done in the same day. There's some things I have to get done now, and there's some things I can wait, and I have to be able to prioritize what those things are. And that's kind of where that calendar for me comes into place, is where I prioritize, where I set that, and where I make space for that. So I'm not always thinking about those things when I go home. So when I go home, I can be home. I can be present.
Right. No, that's great. And having that system, yeah, we got that update. Um, the Google Calendar, right?
Yeah.
It's notifying us. So definitely great to hear how you had a systematic approach to how to balance your life. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move out the way, and you have the floor, and just kind of close us out of one piece of advice or encouragement to to give educators of making that long lasting approach.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, you cannot do this job alone. You gotta have people in your life to support you and help you do this job. So, for me, my family has been a very much of supportive role in my journey as an educational leader. But also, I have to look outside of my school district and building to create networks and relationships and collaborate with other professionals in this field, because that's where you're going to learn and you're going to grow, and you're going to be able to take those things, bring them back to your district to where you can help even have more of an impact. And so being able to understand, don't do this alone, collaborate with your teachers and staff, make sure you build those relationships, but also don't be afraid of coaching. Don't be afraid of seeking out help and having somebody that's done this job work with you and help you. And so that's where I want to really kind of end you guys with is, don't be afraid to go out and seek help, and to listen to my podcast. Educational leadership at Principal JL will also be another resource you can use. You can reach out to me as well. I will do my best to help you in any capacity that you may have. But at the same time, there's other people out there that I can connect you with if you are looking for more Pacific coaching on some things as well. And so that's where I'll leave you. And don't do this job alone. Reach out, network, and collaborate.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff. I'm gonna drop you in the background. So I knew it was going to be great, Jeff, and his approach to not just the role of a principal, but the role of a leader. You hear a lead like within 5 minutes of talking, 3 minutes, I say 3 to 5 minutes of talking to someone, you understand the capacity of that leader and the way that they approach and the things that they do say. So has been an amazing episode. Again, his contact information will be in the description, so make sure you go and check it out. Make sure you subscribe to his podcast, and I have that linked in the description as well. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining. This is 50 Educators from 50 states. It is the Nebraska edition. So, hey, you have a great one. We are out.